Discover the amazing rancher who defied his village for the blind Apache chief's daughter, an incredible tale of heart and heritage. Caleb's heart raced as he rode through the dust-choked streets of his hometown. The murmurs hung heavy in the air, a chorus of judgment that spread like wildfire each Sunday at church. He couldn't shake the feeling of eyes boring into him, whispering secrets wrapped in scorn. Of all the cattle he wrangled and fields he plowed, nothing felt as daunting as the guilt weighing down on him for loving Naya, the Apache chief's blind daughter. There was a fierce tug of war within him, the agony of a man caught between the comfort of tradition and the allure of something extraordinary. As he lay awake most nights, the moonlight cascading through his window, he thought of her smile, how it ignited a warmth inside him. But each stolen moment under the mesquite tree brought the cold wind of disapproval swirling around him, wrapping his heart in ice. His family's legacy loomed large, the unspoken rules that bound him far tighter than any lasso he had ever wielded. Naya saw the stars through sound, a remarkable gift that stirred awe in his heart. Yet here he was grappling with a fear that had no name. The townsfolk's laughter at the mention of their bond often mingled with the wind, wrapping around his deepest insecurities. He discovered the scrolls hidden in Naya's family lodge one evening, ancient wisdom rooted in generations of understanding the land, knowledge that could save his struggling ranch. Shadows flickered around him as he realized the potential intertwined with the risk of being with her. Would he betray his family for love? A voice inside urged him to embrace the chance to bring their worlds together, but nagging doubts pulled him back into tradition's suffocating embrace. Would closing that door mean abandoning love? He could already hear the whispers growing. Caleb's lost. He's against us. Before the chaotic village meeting, the thrill weaved with a suffocating fear. He could only hear the rallying cries of old friends turned enemies. The night was heavy with promises, and each breath he took echoed with unsaid words. "I'll fight for us," he whispered to her, holding her hand tightly. But even in that tender moment, a flood of doubt washed over him. Could he truly withstand the storm? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The sun rose like a fireball, igniting tension already crackling in the air as Caleb rode into the heart of town, each hoofbeat relentless against the dusty ground. The crowd quieted, eyes narrowing as he approached. Friends who had been brothers turned stark shadows of resentment before him. The whispers pierced him. Loyalty versus love battled fiercely within. With each step, he felt the walls closing in, a cacophony of disbelief, betrayal, rage brewing around him. Would he break from the chains of his upbringing, or would the familiar comfort of acceptance smother everything he dared to feel? The weight of his choices pressed down, heavy and unyielding, and he stood on the precipice of a life-altering moment, trapped between a love that shone brighter than any star and the weight of tradition that held him prisoner. Caleb felt the air thicken with tension, suffocating in its intensity as he squared his shoulders, and the crowd's murmurs morphed into a deafening silence. Each pair of eyes bore into him, and he could practically taste the disbelief that hung around them like a shroud. It wasn't just the weight of their scrutiny that crushed him. It was the nagging reminder of everything that was expected, of him and of the legacy he was tethered to. The moment stretched infinitely as he grappled with his thoughts. They wanted tradition, a familiar narrative to ease their fears. Caleb is one of us. The echo of their minds raced like a stampede in his own, and for a fleeting instant, he wished for the simplicity of compliance. But Naya's laughter, pure and untainted, rose above the cacophony, sparking a rage and courage within him that had long lain dormant. Something clicked inside as he reeled from the pressure, digging deep into the knowledge he kept tucked away, the scrolls he had uncovered in the intimate shadows of Naya's family home. Ancient wisdom whispered of harmony between their worlds, of unity woven into the fabric of their lives. There was an opportunity to uplift his failing ranch, but it would not be without consequences. What if he embraced that knowledge and shared it despite the inevitable backlash that could follow? The thought electrified him, and he acknowledged the glimmer of hope it offered. "Enough!" he shouted, breaking the oppressive silence. The crowd recoiled, shock rippling through them. "You look at me as if I've betrayed you, as if my love signals your downfall. But look upon your own fear. Have we not all been taught that the land speaks to those who listen?" Naya hears the voices of the stars. When she sees beyond what you allow yourselves to perceive. Faces shifted from disbelief to shock and then to outrage. Caleb felt a knot in his throat. Their reactions only stoked the flame of his resolve. "What I feel for Naya is more than an affront to tradition. It is the very essence of what connects us all. Let us harness the strength of our stories, the pulse of this land." A murmur arose from the edges, supportive voices edging forward amidst the hostility. Caleb seized the moment, driven not by the roar of defiance but by the shared understanding that had begun to resonate through the crowd. He stepped forward, focusing on familiar faces amidst the storm of resistance. "I stand at a crossroads, but I see a future where our stories intertwine, not tear us apart. Open your hearts, or risk losing the fabric of this very community." They hesitated, perceptions wavering as the pulse of fear and curiosity danced between him and the townsfolk. Just as he thought he saw a chink in their armor of animosity, a man he once called a friend stepped up, a bitter edge in his voice. "You are a fool, Caleb. Love blinds you to the cost of your choices. What is the solace of a ranch built on division? Your destiny is in the soil of our past, not chasing after something that doesn't belong." Caleb's heart raced, his deepest fears echoed in those words. Yet he felt something larger than that fear wrapping around him, the voices of the past colliding with the hope of tomorrow. The air crackled with tension as whispers of dissent began to ripple through the crowd. Would his courage to unite their worlds breathe life into their futures, or would it seal their divisions forever? His breath hitched as he prepared to respond, a fervent desire igniting within him. The temperature rose, decisions loomed, and with them, the potential for unimaginable change. "No one can decide my path for me," Caleb declared, his voice firm. "I am not lost, nor am I abandoning our legacy. I am here to forge a new one." As he locked eyes with Naya, waiting anxiously for his next word, he felt a jolt of clarity. But how would it all end? Would the townsfolk accept his vision, or was this the beginning of a long, unyielding battle? The moment of truth was almost at hand, pulsing in the tension that gripped the air, leaving only one question to loom unanswered. Would he emerge from this confrontation to ignite change, or would the ties that bound him to tradition drag him down once and for all? Caleb stood at the precipice of his own making, feeling the weight of the crowd's collective breath drawn tight with anticipation. He had cast the first stone into the waters of tradition, and now ripples of uncertainty surged back at him, threatening to engulf him. His heart pounded as he fought against the naysayers, yet the internal turmoil erupted. Were his ideals lofty or wholly misguided? The bitter edge in his friend's voice gnawed at his resolve. While he felt the impulse to retort, to defend his vision, he took a deep breath instead. It was time to transform anguish into strategy. Caleb reminded himself that this confrontation wasn't about winning or losing, it was about cultivating understanding. Naya's smile flashed in his mind, a beacon drawing him forward. She believed in him, so perhaps he could believe in himself enough to rise above the noise. "Maybe you're right," he said, acknowledging the voice that challenged him. "But let me ask you this. Does adhering strictly to the past gain us any fortune? The soil of old traditions can also yield nothing but dust if we neglect to nurture it with new ideas." He searched the faces of the townsfolk, desperate to see just a spark of his vision reflected back. "I want to cultivate a future for all of us, one that interlaces our histories instead of severing us apart." As the murmurs circulated, Caleb felt a stirring in his stomach, a mixture of fear and excitement battling for dominance. What did he really know about the future? He could leverage the wisdom hidden in those scrolls, yes, but the fear of alienating his community lingered like a specter. Could he find common ground? Was his bond with Naya strong enough to withstand the backlash? Pressing on, Caleb shared his findings from the scrolls, excitedly recounting the harmonious relationship between their ancestors and the land. "Our forebears thrived because they weren't shackled by rigid traditions. They learned, adapted, and embraced change. I believe our ranch, the life I've been building, is merely a reflection of that very spirit. We can evolve together." The crowd remained conflicted, threaded with skepticism. But there were glimmers of intrigue surfacing, those who listened intently, nodding as he spoke. Caleb seized the opportunity to connect. I want to open my ranch to new practices I learned from Naya's family. Land stewardship that honors both our ancestors and the wisdom passed down from generation to generation. Together, this can unify rather than divide. Suddenly, a woman stepped forward, her brow furrowed. And what if this doesn't work out? What if we lose everything we've built? The despair encasing her words resonated. He recognized her vulnerability, the very same worries that clawed at him. Caleb softened his tone, empathy threading through his response. I won't pretend to have all the answers, but finding a new way doesn't mean forsaking the old. It means learning from it. A partnership with Naya's people won't reduce our worth. It will enrich it. With his heart pounding inside his chest, Caleb realized that the act of simply stating his beliefs had sparked a conversation he'd long feared to have. The umbrella of uncertainty still loomed heavily, but those resistant to his ideas began to query quietly among themselves. What if he could dismantle the animosity that had so long stood between their two worlds? Just as hope flickered in his chest, a voice rang out from the edge of the crowd, a sharp edge to its tone. You're going to sell out for a girl? Is that worth risking the ranch for? At that instant, Caleb fell silent, the intensity of the accusation resounding painfully. The weight of loyalty tugged on him, but so did the tether to change, to love. Each contradiction forced him to confront a choice, cling to his past, or forge a compelling future. Maybe it is, he declared, steeling himself against the doubt. Maybe love is exactly what we need to redefine our legacy. Sparks of dissent flickered dimly in the crowd, but the air charged with a new tension. He could not turn back now, the path ahead challenge-laden yet brightened by the potential of change. Caleb felt the ground beneath him shift as allies began to emerge timidly among the ranks. As murmurs of courage started weaving through the resistance, it dawned on him, what awaited on the other side of this outreach could lead to the very thing that eluded him until now. His heart thudded as he glanced at Naya beside him, caught between hope and trepidation. What comes next could change everything, he thought, a wave of anxiety crashing through him at the implications of his fervor. It was both thrilling and terrifying. But what if this was just the beginning of a deeper confrontation, a reckoning not only with the town, but with his own convictions? As thoughts swirled, a cold realization swept over him. He stood on the edge of a new battle, not just for their future together, but for the redemption of their intertwined legacies. The time had come to face the truth of his commitment. Would he succumb to fear or march forward, fueled by love? Caleb stood on the precipice of his resolve, the echo of the accusation cascading through him like a sudden storm. The crowd's murmur swelled again, shrouding him in varied emotions: doubt, anger, determination. He needed to ground himself, to find strength in vulnerability, rather than retreating into defensiveness. He looked out at the sea of faces, each representing a piece of his past, a shared history that felt heavier, yet more fragile than ever. What if I did risk everything? What if I dared to embrace this seemingly impossible love? The thoughts surged within him as he cultivated a deeper understanding of what he was truly fighting for. His future was inextricably linked with Naya's, a blend of hopes and dreams forged in the same fertile soil he sought to cultivate. Caleb inhaled deeply, stating clearly, I'm not selling out. I'm investing in a vision that can bridge gaps, one that transforms fear into possibility. Those words resonated not just with the crowd, but within himself. He felt the pressure of expectation lessening, replaced by a flicker of belief, a belief that he could enact true evolution, personally and professionally. Even as doubts crept in from skeptical corners, he planned his next moves with increasing clarity. His interactions with Naya had shown him the potential for partnership grounded in mutual respect and shared goals. It was an unfolding journey, a new narrative waiting to be written. But how could he share this vision effectively? The key would lie not just in words, but in actions that spoke louder than any rhetoric. Resolving to cultivate understanding, Caleb envisioned a summit of sorts, a gathering that would explore their histories through shared practices well beyond the confines of the ranch. What if, he mused quietly, we invite those who are open to engaging in discussions about the future, not opposition, but collaboration? he understood that this would require stepping out of the shadows of his own limitations, not only as a rancher, but as a leader willing to redefine what legacy meant. Naya's family had much wisdom to offer, rooted in respect for the land that needed no scripts or overly formal invitations. The thought filled him with excitement, and he felt a sense of urgency to initiate this movement. It was time for him to orchestrate an open dialogue about innovative land stewardship practices, integrating the wisdom of Naya's lineage while showing that their methods weren't dismissive of his own heritage. The foundation of that collaboration, the heart of his ranch, could reflect a marriage of tradition and innovation, respect and evolution. But first, he needed to align his actions with his values, a true reflection of the future he envisioned. The sigh of relief from the crowd was faint, yet palpable. The tide was turning, slowly but surely. Caleb felt a gentle weight on his arm, Naya, offering her unwavering support. In her gaze, he found affirmation. "We'll navigate this together," it seemed to say. That promise fueled Caleb's determination to wrestle with both external challenges and the internal conflicts that surged within him. With a newfound sense of agency, the urgency heightened. He would begin orchestrating community meetings to introduce this concept. He would lead by example, demonstrating that progress could grow not from creating divisions, but through shared knowledge and respect. Yet, as the sparkle of hope ignited within, the question lingered. What would be the reaction of the staunchest traditionalists? What if they reject this idea before it even has a chance to bloom? Manipulating old fears while stoking determination, he actively began recalibrating his perception of risk. In this dance between vulnerability and tenacity, Caleb promised himself he would step onto the stage of the community, unafraid to engage deeply, even with anger or dissent waiting in the wings. As he prepared to share plans for the gathering, anticipation gripped him anew. The stakes felt impossibly high. An abyss of uncertainty still lay ahead. Would they understand? Would they transcend tradition for the possibility of a more integrated future? He must not retreat. This was the moment when passion, rooted in love and fierce resolve, could withstand any test. Caleb took one last look at Naya, her quiet strength anchoring his resolve. "We could change everything," he thought. With his next steps closer than ever, he felt a pulsating energy vibrating beneath the surface. Without that grounding force, would he be able to weather the storm of resistance? The true battle had yet to begin, and he was ready to face it with eyes wide open. Caleb awoke the next morning with the weight of expectations pressing down on him. As sunlight streamed through the window, it illuminated the uncertainty that brewed in his mind like storm clouds. He understood that everyone's eyes were on him, but more crucially, he needed to reconcile the man he was with the leader he aspired to be. He felt an urgent need to act rather than merely dream. That day, he decided, would be spent drafting a plan for the gathering, a tangible expression of his vision. The thought of facing those traditionalists loomed large in his mind, but he recognized that confronting this fear was essential to his growth. The doubts that seeded in his mind were only as powerful as he allowed them to be. The ranch stood alive with sounds of nature, yet there was a disquieting rhythm within him that echoed louder than the chorus outside. With each step he took toward his workspace, he reflected on the challenges ahead. He flicked on his laptop, creating a blank document that felt like an empty canvas, beckoning him to spill his thoughts onto its surface. The cursor blinked, prodding him toward action. As he wrote, he focused on individual elements that would bridge the gap between his vision and the community's traditions. "What if we highlight the strengths in both practices?" he wrote, allowing ideas to flow freely. Integrative strategies emerged, blending techniques Naya's family had perfected with his own methodologies. It was a gesture of goodwill, a sign that he valued history even as he sought to reform it. Moments turned into hours, and once he had a rough draft, he felt a stirring excitement and fear meld within him. Would this effectively resonate? He could practically hear the whispers of doubt. Would they dismiss him as a naive dreamer? But then he remembered Naya's words had once grounded his resolve. Each brush with her strength pushed him just a bit further from his trepidations. Caleb took a break, stepping outside to breathe in the crisp air. The ranch sprawled out before him, a living testament to resilience and change. He observed the fields, once categorized by strict techniques, now brimming with potential innovations. The interplay of sun and soil mirrored his own inner conflict as he stood at a convergence of past and future. The intricacies of their shared histories with Naya unfolded before him in a captivating way. It was her laughter, an unwavering support, that reminded him of his purpose. This wasn't simply about the ranch, but the legacy they could forge together. But time was ticking, and he faced an immediate dilemma. When and how could he present this to his community? His instinct compelled him to invite influential figures first. Who would best articulate the necessity of cooperation? In absence of definitive answers, he resolved to reach out personally, arranging informal meetings where he could foster one-on-one dialogue before opening any broader discussions. As Caleb envisioned those conversations, he felt a swell of courage rise anew. That evening, while penning a message to several elders, he was startled by a knock on his door. It was Naya, her presence filling the space with warmth and determination. "I sense you're at a crossroads," she said, glancing at the papers strewn across his table. Caleb hesitated, then shared his plans, illuminating his hope for integrating their practices. He watched as her brow furrowed into contemplation, the weight of his ideas resting in her hands. "You must remember," she replied slowly, "that those who fear change often disguise it as tribal loyalty. Your mission will resonate, but it will take patience, and you may face unwarranted backlash." Her words echoed Caleb's own fears. But what if they reject progress altogether? The prospect of failure gnawed at him, testing the very foundation of what he had worked so hard to establish. "Face them with transparency," Naya encouraged. "Let your actions speak before your words do. When the reaction stings, turn it into insight. Those who challenge you will reveal their own vulnerabilities." Caleb's resolve hardened at her wisdom. He realized the most significant lessons would come not just from success, but from navigating the inevitable conflicts. As Naya took his hand and squeezed it tightly, an unshakable bond forged between them. He felt aspects of himself he'd never known taking shape. Empathy, courage, authenticity. They could change everything together. He finally felt it with every fiber of his being. Yet the horizon still loomed with promises of contradiction. Could he truly prepare for the intensity of the responses? As night fell, the flicker of stars above danced like the hopes that pulsed through him, whispering of uncharted territories waiting to unfold. In the dark stillness, Caleb determined to embrace whatever conflict lay ahead, for the time had come to face both allies and adversaries alike. Would his vision withstand the scrutiny? The stakes were higher than ever, and his next steps carried the weight of his future. The real test awaited just beyond the horizon. Caleb awoke the next morning with a renewed sense of urgency threading through his veins. The lingering focus on his responsibility had transformed into a fire, igniting his determination. He had spent the night going over Naya's insights, each one unraveling a new layer of understanding. It wasn't just other people's perceptions he needed to navigate, it was also his own self-doubt. He started his day with a solitary cup of coffee. The familiar aroma provided comfort, anchoring him before the tumult of personal revelations would unfold. He let his mind drift to the upcoming discussions, pacing the worn floorboards of the kitchen. How could he galvanize support without appearing presumptuous? The notion of vulnerability clung to him, reminding him that leadership demanded not just strength, but authenticity. With a few breaths, the anxiety began to settle. He turned his focus to the constructive task ahead. Snatching a notepad, he diagrammed potential narrative threads for his conversations. He needed to craft his vision into a story that would resonate, not only with the elders, but with every rancher who valued tradition. Each item scratched down was more than a point. It was a potential bridge connecting the past to the future. But as each new idea took shape, he felt the suffocating grip of fear, attempting to coil around his thoughts again. What if this failed? What if his ambitions led only to ruin? It was at that moment of uncertainty that he felt a wave of empathy. This was a fear everyone bore beneath their own ambitions. Wasn't that human? He couldn't allow it to paralyze him. Each person he faced would hold distinct fears of their own. Perhaps by revealing his vulnerabilities, he could foster an atmosphere of honesty that would compel them to lower their defenses as well. Leaving the comfort of home, Caleb strode towards the barn. The morning sun shone high, illuminating the intricacies of his surroundings. The animals meandered freely, and the crops glistened with dew. In this moment, he realized he had been wielding the vibrant energy of the ranch's life. It was a place of transformation, similar to the shifts he yearned to establish within the community. He would have to embody that very essence of resilience. Caleb spent hours attending to chores, allowing physical labor to cleanse his mind. As he fed the horses, he contemplated the wisdom buried in their behavior. They needed both strength and trust, a dynamic he knew mirrored the response he would require from the ranchers. Would they accept change? Were they ready to embrace the nuances of collaboration? With an invigorated spirit, he returned to his workspace, transformations bubbling within him. The blank document had metamorphosed into a canvas, not just of words, but of heartfelt intentions. He began outlining his conversational strategy, merging his insights with Naya's wisdom. It crystallized. His mission was not external domination, but an invitation for dialogue, an encouraging path forward rooted in respect. Emboldened by clarity, he reached out to the elders, his heart racing, each letter he crafted bursting with enthusiasm and sincerity. He envisioned leading with acknowledgement, honoring their contributions while presenting the collective potential that could spark from embracing innovation. Yet what if they met his invitations with resistance? The mere thought sent him spiraling back into doubt. Caleb paused, grappling with the weight of the unknown. Each rejection felt like a personal affront, a challenge to his identity. How could he confront their legacy of tradition while advocating for modern methods? There was no simple answer. But Caleb understood that the crux of any meaningful interaction lay in the heart's resilience. If they were to invite change, it wouldn't come from negating their history. It would demand a tapestry woven with threads of the old and strands of the new. Just as the sun began its descent, casting elongated shadows through the barn, his phone buzzed against the desk. An unexpected message from Naya flashed on the screen, breaking through his contemplative state. Remember, Caleb, we can't predict their reactions, but we can certainly prepare ourselves for every possible outcome. Let's discuss tomorrow. Hope swirled within him, intertwining with the tension that accompanied uncertainty. He felt a shimmer of readiness for that discussion, yet deep inside lingered the unshakable question. Could he remain steadfast when confronted by relentless opposition? As Caleb prepared himself once more for the unfolding storm of participation, he understood a critical truth. This was not solely about farming practices. This was about planting seeds of dialogue in an emotionally charged landscape, cultivating trust before anything could flourish. And with Naya's imminent presence and support, he steeled himself for the growing conflict that awaited. With a determined breath, he realized he'd soon confront the elders' truth, whatever form it might take. Would he stand unyielding among them, unwavering in the storm? The answer hovered tantalizingly close, yet dreadfully out of reach, waiting just beyond his next step. Caleb's night was restless. Sleep evaded him like shadows retreating before dawn. The weight of his looming conversations with the elders lingered, stretching like an unbroken tension across his chest. In the soft gray light of morning, he recognized that his journey was no longer just about ranching. It was personal. It was a quest to unearth the deepest layers of his own resilience. After a quick breakfast, he found himself staring at the sprawling fields. There, beneath the vast sky, he felt the pressure of expectation pressing heavily on his shoulders. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped a cup of coffee, the liquid warmth a stark contrast to the chill of doubt that lingered in his core. Could he truly honor their traditions while gently steering them toward a new era? The question echoed in his mind, a continual reminder of the stakes at hand. Caleb's resolve had been forged in the fires of empathy, and yet he was aware that confronting the elders would require more than compassion. He felt the familiar tug of fear. The elders had a way of dismissing ideas that deviated from the norm, and they had built this community, crafted their legacy through years of steadfastness. Could he rely on their goodwill if he challenged their beliefs? With Naya's message still fresh in his mind, he resolved to prepare himself for the challenging dialogue ahead. He pulled out his notepad and stared at the page before him, knowing that this wasn't just about presenting facts or strategies. It was about connection. Drawing from the week prior, he recalled how well he had articulated thoughts in conversation with Naya. She'd seen potential in his ability to weave emotion into words. It was this emotional intelligence that could bridge the gap between the past and the future. In a flurry of inspiration, he began jotting down phrases that encapsulated his vision. Honoring the legacy, embracing change, community strength through evolution. Each word crafted not just a message, but a sentiment designed to resonate with the souls of those he admired yet feared. Hours slipped away as he quilled his thoughts, threading stories from the ranch that illustrated the potential beauty of transformation. He envisioned the elders, their faces illuminated as they found understanding in his words. Yet even as he drafted message after message, the gnawing uncertainty returned. What if they rejected him outright? What if his carefully chosen words fell on deaf ears? The day wore on, and as the sun dipped low, a sense of foreboding replaced the excitement that had earlier surged through him. He grabbed his jacket and stepped outside, where the air was crisp and biting, reminiscent of change. Caleb charted a path along the fence line, a long stretch of wood separating tradition from innovation. Each footstep felt like a weighted decision, a tangible echo of the path he would soon take. It's easy to misjudge the motivations behind someone else's resistance. Was it rooted in fear, or perhaps a misguided sense of loyalty? These were notions swirling in his mind as he engaged in mental rehearsal for the impending confrontation. In those moments, he caught glimpses of the stronger, more assertive version of himself, the one capable of standing firm against adversity. With every step, Caleb began to solidify his resolve. Perhaps it wasn't about convincing the elders to embrace his ideas. Rather, it was about creating a safe space for genuine discussion, an opportunity for all voices to be heard. Caleb paused at the edge of the field, taking in the landscape that sprawled before him. The rich greens and browns seemed to pulse with life, emblematic of the growth he longed for within the community. But amid that realization, a darker thought crept in. What if the terrain of his path was more treacherous than he anticipated? What if, in embracing this dialogue, he inadvertently ignited a wildfire of conflict? As night descended, he felt the uncertainty crawl back into his thoughts. The warming light of his home had never felt so far away, and tomorrow's confrontation loomed like an unseen predator. Was he ready to face the elders and risk everything he cared about? As Caleb returned to the porch, his mind swirled with resolution and doubt intertwined. Each step forward felt weighted with implications he had yet to fully grasp. He would confront a legacy entrenched in tradition, but would he also discover his own hidden strength? The thought lingered, tantalizingly just out of reach, igniting a flicker of unease. How would he support the elders' pride while igniting change? Caleb awoke before dawn, his mind racing with potential outcomes and words he hoped would flow freely. As he lay on the mattress, he could almost hear the crackle of his own heartbeats, a rhythmic warning that this was just the calm before the storm. The early light barely peeked over the horizon, throwing long shadows that danced across the room. He couldn't shake the feeling that today would carve a defining line through his life. After a quick shower, he dressed with deliberate care, choosing his clothes as consciously as a soldier would don armor before battle. Each article was a statement of intent. The soft flannel shirt paired with well-worn jeans spoke of humility, but held a promise of strength. He was not just a rancher, but a man poised to take a stand. Stepping outside, a wave of chill hit him, invigorating yet sobering. He navigated through the dew-laden grass towards the barn, where thousands of mornings had begun with the same routine, yet today felt different. Today, everything hinged on his ability to convey his vision to the elders. With each breath, he embraced the sharpness in the air, bolstering his confidence. It was now or never. Caleb's hands worked automatically as he prepared the animals for the day, but his thoughts were restless. He knew the natural rhythms of the ranch better than he knew himself, yet this day marked a shift, not just for him, but for those who depended on the land. Would he create a path that embraced modernity while respecting deep-rooted values? Or would he falter at the first sign of resistance? With his chores completed and the sun starting its ascent, he sought out a moment of solitude beneath the ancient oak by the creek. Its sprawling branches had witnessed decades of wisdom and conflict. Could he find his own strength mirrored in that sentience? As he leaned against the sturdy trunk, he rehearsed his speech again, the cadence of his voice echoing softly against the leaves rustling above. This time, he sharpened his focus. Emotional intelligence wasn't merely an asset, it would be his sword today. He envisioned the elder's expressions, how his words could foster understanding, bridging gaps of time and experience. If he could anchor his thoughts in their legacy while illustrating the inevitable tide of change, perhaps their collective pride could coexist with the unknown. Doubt crept back in, whispering nightmarish scenarios. What if they laughed? What if he stumbled over his words? Those images were like stones in a river, unavoidable and threatening to disrupt his flow. But amid the turbulence, a flicker of clarity glimmered. This was a community steeped in loyalty, but loyalty could evolve just as the seasons did. He had to trust that they would find a place to understand growth. Caleb returned home to prepare for the meeting. The simplistic nature of his surroundings, the ordinary kitchen table, each cup and plate carefully laid out, served as a stark contrast to the chaos in his mind. He paused for a moment, glancing at each object, feeling their tangible connection to his life. This was the very essence of tradition he wanted to honor. A surge of determination washed over him as he grabbed his notepad again. He reworked his key phrases, aiming for clarity and warmth. "Shared strength in progress," he wrote, then crossed it out, replacing it with "progress rooted in respect." Each iteration towed the line between what was and what could be. As the clock inched closer to the meeting, he took a deep breath, steadying his heartbeat. The weight of his choice felt heavier now, not out of fear, but a sense of responsibility. He was not just speaking for himself, he was speaking for the future. Perhaps for Naya too, whose spirit whispered encouragement in every corner of his mind. With each purposeful step toward the meeting place, Caleb knew he was crossing from one reality into another, a place where his vulnerabilities would be laid bare, and the truths he had clung to would be fiercely scrutinized. Could he find the courage to face the elders, unmasking his heart in front of those he'd long admired? His resolve solidified with each forward stride, yet the stirring questions remained. What would he become in this pivotal moment? Would he emerge as the voice of evolution, or would his ambition shatter under the weight of their heritage? His footsteps fell silent as he approached the meeting spot. There was no turning back now. He was ready to confront uncertainty, ready to face the elders, and perhaps ready to discover the strength he had never realized resided within him. Caleb stood at the edge of the clearing, his heart racing as he scanned the faces of the elders seated beneath the old sycamore. It felt like a trial, each wise gaze fixed upon him, their expressions a complex tapestry of skepticism and respect. As he approached, he could feel the weight of countless expectations pressing down, yet among them, flickers of encouragement from a few seasoned souls who had seen the world morph around them. The moment he began to speak, his voice felt like a fragile leaf caught in a gale. The carefully constructed phrases that had echoed in his mind now stuttered into an uncertain rhythm. He captured their attention with a few initial anecdotes, recalling the days of old and how the land had nurtured generations. Each word was woven with sincerity, but doubt fluttered. What if it was never enough? "You know the seasons," he continued, drawing upon the vivid imagery of harvests and droughts, familiar territory for his audience. "But listen, change is also a part of our season. We have the chance to nurture both tradition and progress." He paused, scanning the elders' faces, searching for a glimmer of acceptance. Caleb's pulse quickened. He spoke of sustainable practices, of incorporating technology to aid their age-old methods. He illustrated how the ranch could thrive, not in spite of its roots, but because of them. Yet he was met with silence, an empty space where his hopes hung like unwelcome fog. Theirs was a world built on the solidity of stone, and he was asking them to embrace shifting sands. Then he noticed old Landon, a man of rugged insights, leaning slightly forward, brow furrowed. Caleb seized the moment. "It's not about erasing our heritage, it's about enriching it." The sincerity in his voice surprised him, a note he hadn't expected to strike. Could that be the breakthrough he needed? Questions began to arise, gentle but probing. "What if we fail?" one elder queried, a worried tremor in his voice, echoing Caleb's hidden fears. The air shifted, palpable tension crackling in the sunlight. Caleb felt the room shrink around him, as if the elders were all watching to see if he would crumble. He inhaled deeply, visualizing Naya's supportive smile, a reminder of his purpose. "Failure is just another lesson," he replied, an undeniable potency emerging in his voice. Every great rancher has faced storms and droughts. It's how we respond that defines our legacy. His mind raced, an internal dialogue battling against the suffocation of their skepticism, but suddenly a realization struck him. He was more than a man seeking approval, he had grown into a leader. Then Landon raised a hand, signaling a moment of silence, the heaviness of his age filling the gap. "Caleb," he began, the tremor now more contemplative than skeptical. "You speak with passion. Perhaps we fear change, not for its own sake, but for what it might cost us." The murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. Was he moving them? Seizing upon this window, Caleb leaned deeper. "What we cherish doesn't have to be lost. Together we can craft a future that honors our past." In those moments, a shift occurred. The elders leaned in, curiosity sparking between them. Hope threaded into his words, igniting something long dormant among them. But as the discussion deepened, the anxiety within him twisted tighter, punctuated by an inevitable question. What if their acceptance hinged not just on ideas, but on action? Would his vision come undone if they didn't join him in concrete steps toward this new path? The echo of his earlier dread returned, but now it stirred not just apprehension, but an iron resolve. As the debate ensued, embracing both apprehension and intrigue, Caleb recognized the power of vulnerability. He wasn't merely presenting ideas, he was unveiling possibilities that lay just beyond their comfort zones. Yet, with each open mind, fresh doubts spiraled. What if his unveiling exposed depths he hadn't adequately prepared for? And so, as the sun moved through the sky, a shared uncertainty and a spark of commitment began to hover over the group. As he spoke, an invitation to engage and deliberate emerged, but also a brewing storm of unforeseen challenges he hadn't anticipated. With the elders leaning into the dialogue, their voices mingling like an electrum blend of history and dreams, chiming in the pooled wisdom of a community struggling with the idea of rebirth, Caleb wondered, was surrendering to mistrust a part of becoming a true leader? As the hours stretched, a fundamental truth settled in his chest. Growth required stepping outside carved paths, and it was now time to confront not just the elders, but himself. Every revelation threatened to bring new obstacles, but perhaps this was the crucible of transformation he needed. The meeting ended with tentative agreements and future proposals, leaving Caleb with an undercurrent of excitement and worry flowing in his veins. But as he walked back home, a seed of new resolve sprouted within him. Yet, would this be enough to unite the elders and their traditions with his vision? The night fell heavy as he settled into the familiar quiet of home, but a new unrest churned. Tomorrow awaited with unresolved tensions, and the reflection of what he had learned tonight began to awaken deeper fears. Was he truly ready for the task ahead? Or was there more to confront than just the elders' initial response? It was time to step into the storm of unexpected change, to seek out the true cost of courage. And silently, he asked himself, how far would he venture to protect the very essence of what he loved? Caleb awoke the next morning to a profound silence, the weight of yesterday's conversations still pressing against his chest. He had taken the monumental step of presenting his vision for a future that intertwined his ranch with the wisdom of Naya's heritage. What had once been an invisible chasm now felt increasingly navigable, yet doubt still clung to him like morning mist. Stepping outside, the golden light of dawn bathed the ranch in warmth, a reminder of the new beginnings that lay just beyond fear. He took a moment to absorb the peace around him, birds chirping, the gentle sway of grass in the breeze, and the rhythmic sounds of animals stirring. This tranquil scene gave him the grounding he needed to approach his next challenge with resolve. Determined, Caleb turned his focus to planning his follow-up meeting with the elders, a necessary continuation of their lively discussion from the previous day. Fueled by a fire to cultivate bridge building rather than confrontation, he realized it was time not only to speak but to complete the transformational process that had begun. Caleb grabbed a notepad and pen, envisioning a series of hands-on demonstrations at the ranch, practical showcases of Naya's family's traditions alongside his own. This would serve as a space for open dialogue, where experience could replace fear and speculation. The foundations of their community lay within shared stories and practices, and involving everyone created a tapestry of collaboration. Ideas flowed freely as he sketched out the agenda for the upcoming days, including hands-on workshops, discussions of land stewardship, and the integration of new farming techniques that respected their heritage while embracing innovation. As he wrote, a growing sense of optimism surged through him. The elders would no longer see progress as a threat, but as an asset. Naya arrived shortly after, her presence as steady as ever. She flashed him a warm smile, sensing the shift within him. He recounted his plans, his voice imbued with a confidence that surprised even him. Encouraged, Naya shared her enthusiasm and ideas of how her family's traditions could complement his own. Together, they began mapping out collaborative initiatives that engaged the community's pride while allowing for growth. Caleb's heart surged with pride as he saw how each discussion built upon the last. This was no longer just a personal mission, but a joint commitment to weave their legacies seamlessly together. That morning transformed into a vision of unified purpose. It didn't just feel right, it felt inevitable. The days that followed were filled with energy. Caleb opened his ranch to all. Farmers, families, and the influencers among the elders began gathering, driven by curiosity and a sense of belonging. This was no longer about choosing between tradition and innovation. It was about creating a canvas where both could flourish side by side. As he led the discussions and practices, he witnessed the skepticism transform into intrigue, and intrigue morph into camaraderie. One particularly cold evening, under the sheltering embrace of the sycamore where their earlier confrontations had taken place, Caleb stood before the gathered group. Among them were the elders he had once feared. Now, however, familiar glances reflected a newfound respect. A bridge formed from shared experiences. Old Landon stepped forward, his voice warm but authoritative. "Caleb, it takes a brave heart not only to speak of change, but to embody it. You have drawn a lineage between the land we know and that which we have yet to discover." The sentiment rippled around the group like a gentle wave, igniting a chorus of agreement. As the weeks passed, Caleb reveled in his personal evolution. Where once he had faltered under the scrutiny of tradition, he now stood as a confident figure, a beacon of progress harmonized with respect. Conversations with elders flowed easily, and their earlier reminders of caution morphed into stories of unity. He could feel the confidence growing, not just in himself, but within the entire community. As harvest season approached, they collaborated to implement practices that honored the past while embracing the future. Caleb's ranch flourished, a physical manifestation of collective triumph, its fields thriving under the care of new methodologies fused with age-old traditions. In those bustling mornings of productivity, Caleb often caught sight of Naya, radiant in her understanding of the land and their shared ambitions. In her presence, he found fulfillment far deeper than he had ever known, a connection woven through shared victories, love, and mutual respect. As the last of the harvest was brought in, the community gathered to celebrate their successes. Caleb stood at the center of it all, bathed in applause and recognition. He had achieved far more than he had dreamed. The ranch was not just thriving, it now served as a hub of collaboration, a living testament to the transformative power of love and courage. In that moment, he realized he hadn't just conquered his fears. He'd forged a path wherein tradition and evolution could not merely coexist, but thrive in unison. The whispered doubts of the past had vanished, replaced by a solid confidence and a profound sense of belonging. As twilight painted the sky in shades of gold and lavender, he looked around, at his community, at Naya, and felt a deep satisfaction washing over him. His journey had led him here, to this place of achievement that intertwined heritage and innovation. This was the moment that cemented his legacy, one built on authenticity, collaboration, and love. Caleb knew that this sense of fulfillment was just the beginning. He would continue to nurture these threads of connection, ensuring they would flourish not just within his lifetime, but for generations to come. The future shimmered ahead like the rising sun, promising new beginnings born out of courage and heart. Now for you, if you've been inspired by Caleb's journey of transformation, you need to subscribe now to catch the next exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Like and comment your thoughts. We want to hear your reactions and theories about this incredible conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful story of love, courage, and achievement.